Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent Fernandez, and it's a pleasure to be here. I want to introduce Will McBride. You know, he's the Assistant BA here. He has helped me with this presentation, put together all the numbers. He's done a fantastic job pulling this together. And I want to thank you for having me tonight. It's kind of hard to follow that with something as boring as school funding. But we're going to try to do a quick presentation. The superintendent and her team, I met with them in the Finance Committee to go over this. They thought it was important to go over for the board and the community. It sort of sets the stage for what you're going to have to deal with in short order with the upcoming budget. I'm advised by the business administrator that the governor's budget was supposed to come out toward the end of this month. I think she's asked for an extension, so it may not come out until March. But this will be a kind of stage-setting presentation for you as the numbers come in to begin to analyze the budget and determine what you need to do this year, and also, more importantly, to highlight some of the structural problems with the funding formula that the district faces going forward. And I'll suggest a few things, some things that you might want to focus on as a board. So I know we have a presentation and you have slides in front of you. Let's just get right into it, and Will, if you need to jump in and clarify, please do. The first chart that we have here is your overall operating budget, your total operating budget for the district, which, as you can see, is a little over $1 billion. There are several key components to this budget. One is what we call the adequacy budget, which is the top line. That's over $600 million, over 60% of your total budget. We're going to focus in on that piece. But I do want to point out that you do have other streams of aid that come in outside of that. You get categorical aid, what we call categorical aid, or per pupil aid amounts from the state to help you with specific expenditures such as transportation, a bit of special education funding, preschool, which is a big part of your budget, fully funded by the state as a result of the Supreme Court's ruling in the Abbott case, and federal funding. At the bottom, there's a number which is less the deduction that goes out for charter schools. We're going to try to unpack that $615 million adequacy budget tonight. That's what we're going to focus in on. That's the one that is at the heart of the SFRA formula and really is at the heart of some of the budget problems that you've struggled with in previous years, and one of the key areas you're going to have to begin to address going forward. So if we go to the next slide, there are some definitions real quick. I just want to highlight a couple of them. These get confusing, understandably. This is kind of the way the formula is set up and works. I know some of you on this board are well versed in this, but it can get confusing. So I just want to go over just a couple of these. One, the adequacy budget, which we're going to talk about, that $615 million, that's the cost of providing all new students in Jersey City with a constitutional education or a thorough and efficient education. That includes the base cost for all your students at the elementary school level, middle school level, and high school level. It also includes the additional cost that the state has calculated for providing extra programs for low-income students, English language learners, and 2/3 of the cost of special education for students with disabilities. 1/3 of that cost is back in that categorical bucket that we showed on the first slide, but 2/3 of the cost of delivering programs and services to students with disabilities is in the adequacy budget. So it's really your part of your cost-based budget that you need to educate all of your students and to provide the additional resources for some of your vulnerable student populations. The other piece here is so how is the adequacy budget funded under the formula? It's funded through, it's a wealth equalized, what the state calls a wealth equalized funding. There is you start out with what is called the local fair share, which is the amount that the state of New Jersey expects your district to contribute from the local property tax. It's a calculation that's based on both property wealth, property value in the city, and also resident household income. It's a very complicated formula. I don't want to go into it, but to fund the adequacy budget, the state starts out with this calculation of what is called the local fair share. The most important thing to recognize about the local fair share is it's what the state expects you to fund, not in Jersey City what you actually fund, because the formula says you either fund, when the formula came in, it said that you either have to fund at the local fair share amount, which many districts in New Jersey were, or your prior local amount, which in Jersey City at the beginning of the formula was well below your local fair share. So that's the number, the lesser of the two. The local tax levy, which we're going to go over, is the actual amount that you raise off the property tax to fund the adequacy budget. The state provides a form of aid called equalization aid to make up the difference between the local levy and the local fair share. There is also adjustment aid, which was important to Jersey City to help you transition to your local fair share because your local levy was so low. There was a gap. That's gone. A bill passed in 2018, S2, which I know many of you know about and have grappled with, phased out adjustment aid and no longer exists. In return for the phase out of adjustment aid, the legislature decided to authorize a payroll tax. So Jersey City is one of only two places in the state, Newark and now Jersey City, that's authorized to impose a payroll tax on employees. All of the payroll tax by law collected by the city is to be transferred to you, to the district, all of it, with an exception now that just went into law this year. The city can keep 3% of what it takes in for administrative costs, the cost of collecting the payroll tax from employers and administering it. But other than that 3% going forward, all of the proceeds from the payroll tax come to the city, and it comes to, the city has to transfer it to the school district, and that's to support the adequacy budget. And we're going to talk about some of the gaps that you have in your adequacy budget. So if we go to the heart of this presentation, which is the next slide, I know this is a lot of numbers. This is a longitudinal look over the last 5 or 6 years, so you can see the trends where things are going. I'm going to pick on the current year, start with that. I'm not going to go over, you can look at this at your leisure. But if you look at the current school year, 25-26, your adequacy budget totaled $732.6 million. Now, what does that mean? That's a calculation by the state based on those costs that I talked about, of the amount that you should be spending to educate your students, all of your students, and provide those extra programs for kids with disabilities, low-income students, and English language learners. That's an important number. That's what the state has said you need, the amount of spending, resources you need to provide all of your students with a comprehensive, thorough, and efficient education. Your local fair share for the first time now exceeds your local levy, or your adequacy budget. So your local fair share, as you can see, has been going up from year to year to year. Why? It's because of the rising property values in the city and increasing resident household income. It continually goes up, and you can expect it to probably go up again. We'll know what that number is in a short period of time when the governor releases the state aid numbers. You'll see that number. You can plug it in. I would probably guarantee that that number of 732.6 million is going to go up. Your local fair share, which is the amount the state expects you to provide based on your the calculation of property wealth and household income, is 739 million, which means the state expects Jersey City taxpayers to actually pay, if you will, expected to pay off the property tax more than your adequacy budget. The important thing, though, is that your local levy, the amount that you actually collect, is only 452 million, which is significantly below your adequacy budget. That's going to create a budget gap. We're going to talk about that in a second. Added to that is the payroll tax, and you can see the numbers there. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Last year, it was 80 million, a little over 80, almost $81 million that you received from the payroll tax, up from 65 million. Equalization aid is, you've lost it all. Why? Because your local fair share exceeds your adequacy budget. The amount they expect you to put in, not what you actually have put in, is the determining factor. So you don't get any state aid to support your adequacy budget anymore, and you've lost the adjustment aid, which was the transitional aid to help you get to that. So your total state and local revenue for last year was about $533 million. So you had a $200 million gap in the amount of revenue, state and all local revenue, available to support your adequacy budget, meaning that you were $200 million below in revenue what the state expects that you, or has determined, I should say, that you spend to educate all of your students. And that obviously is of importance to all of you and the community, because that impacts the programs, services, teachers, and staff, et cetera, that you can provide to your students. To make up some of that gap, you've saved some money in the last 2 or 3 years. You have what's called bank cap, which is non-recurring. It's money that was set aside from the prior couple years that you've applied. You applied $82 million in reserves. That's all that really means, is these were reserves that you didn't spend, set aside, have to spend it within a certain period of time. So this past year you allocated bank cap. The business administrator and Will and your BA have told me that you've got $70 million that you've got available for the coming year, so that's going to be an important number to look at. So your total state and local revenue is $615 million to support your adequacy budget of $732 million, leaving a gap of $117 million. So you have a structural deficit in the amount of state and local revenue available, that is available to you under the state funding formula to provide the teachers, support staff, services, maintenance on your buildings, after-school programs, arts programs, as we've just seen, et cetera, for all of your students, and the additional programs and services that are required by students with disabilities, kids that are behind, and English language learners. So you've reached the point of a growing structural deficit. We'll have to see. It'll be very interesting. It's going to be very interesting to see where that number fits when the numbers come out in a couple of weeks. The last chart we put together is really just to show you the increases in the local levy. One of the things to keep in mind is that your local levy, as I said, was below your local fair share from the get-go. From 2009, when the formula came in, all the way to today, it's been significantly below. And part of the reason you've been unable to get there, to raise your local levy, is because the state imposes a 2% cap, property tax cap. The state imposes that on what you can raise from year to year. They relaxed it for several years, as you can see. As you may remember, those of you that were on the board might remember this, they lifted the cap because you were under adequacy when they took away adjustment aid and allowed you for a few years to go above 2%, and you can see the increases reflected there were substantial in those years. But then the cap is now back on. So even though you moved ahead to get closer to your local fair share, the cap prevents you from doing that now. We'll see if the legislature makes any changes. The last point I want to make on this chart is an important one, which is at the bottom. The total tax rate for Jersey City is now over 2%, equalized tax rate. That's the tax rate for both schools, the city, and the county. The state average is 1.81. You used to be below that number. You're now moving beyond that number. And that gets into a whole question that we can talk about at another time, which is called municipal overburden, which is the load is too much on this formula on local homeowners, property owners, business owners, et cetera, to come up with the property taxes to actually meet that local fair share. So I just want to flag that you're now in the municipal overburden territory that a lot of the Abbott districts were in way back, where they just didn't have the taxing power locally to meet what the state expected them to meet. So a couple of things, and I'll stop. And Will, if you want to add anything, you can jump in. Three things I think there's a lot of things that we can do here, but I want to highlight just three. One is the payroll tax. It's important to get to the bottom of it. The numbers are kind of bounced around, as you can see. All of that, the point I want to make to stress to the board here is that all of the payroll tax by state law collected by the city is to be transferred to the school district. Shouldn't be going anywhere else for municipal services, county, anything else. We need a full and fair accounting of the payroll tax. I don't think that's happened. We've discussed it. There's a new administration, obviously. I think it's an important time to start having a conversation with the budget officials over at the city to make sure that we fully understand how much is being collected and making sure that all of that, less 3%, is transferred, because that's an important piece of local revenue now that's allocated to public education. I should say also that the law that just came in, that was just passed, that allowed the 3%, also opened up the state tax rolls, if you will, to the city, so that the city is going to be getting much better information now from the state on employers' tax collections, which they didn't have previously. So we need to get the city to aggressively collect that tax, make sure we know how much is coming in, and transferring over the full amount to the school district. The other thing that we should be talking about, it's going to take, as you can see, and we'll see when the new budget comes out, we've got this, what we call local levy gap, the gap between the property tax level and the adequacy budget. 200 million now. That may grow in the coming year. We need to talk to state legislators about bringing back another form of state aid to help soften the transition upwards, so that the state is putting some skin in the game, if you will, to help you support that adequacy budget. Adjustment A did that. That's what it was designed to do. But unfortunately, in 2018, the legislature took it away. And the last thing, which is a lot more complicated conversation, is pilots, is the tax abatements. The problem with the tax abatements is that when the city abates the property taxes on development, which you all know has happened quite a bit here, the property value of those buildings is not available for the duration of those tax abatements, and they're usually around 20, 30 years to collect property taxes on them. I mean, I think that if those buildings were actually on the tax rolls for property tax collections, you'd probably be able to close that $200 million gap fairly, reasonably. But it's not. The other problem with the tax abatements is that in lieu of taxes, the city collects what are called pilots payments, which are payment in lieu of taxes. They're fixed payments that they get from the building owners. By state law, school districts are excluded from getting pilot payments. We need to change that law. If that had been in effect 10, 15 years ago, and a portion of the pilot payments not just went to the city and the county, but also to the school district, we probably wouldn't be here talking about this today. So there's a need to really dig in and address the whole question going forward of pilots and the city and the district's exclusion from obtaining pilot revenue. I'm going to stop there. I know that's a heck of a lot. Will, do you want to add anything? Go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to reiterate that for the adequacy budget, local fair share, and the aid, that all of those funds are reflected in the state aid. And in addition to that, all of our revenue expenditures are user-friendly budget. So I just wanted to give some context as to where these figures come from.
Thank you.